The lobby of the Rosewood Grand Hotel gleamed under the soft glow of morning sunlight. Crystal chandeliers hung above polished marble floors, and the air smelled faintly of lavender and wealth. For guests, it was a place of quiet luxury. For employees, it was a place of unspoken hierarchy, where smiles were rehearsed and empathy was optional. At the reception desk, Ethan Marsh, the hotel manager, adjusted his tie and admired his reflection in the glass doors. Every movement was calculated, every smile a performance. To him, reputation mattered more than kindness, and perfection meant control. The revolving doors turned, and a young woman entered. Mid-20s, short dark hair, neatly dressed in a soft blue blouse and gray slacks. She looked around uncertainly, clutching a small notepad in one hand and a hotel brochure in the other. When she approached the counter, she smiled politely and began writing something quickly. Ethan glanced at her, confused. "Good morning," he said in his crisp, professional tone. "Checking in." The woman nodded, then turned the notepad toward him. The handwriting was neat. "Reservation for Anna Clark. Room under Clark Holdings." Ethan blinked, then frowned slightly. "You can speak, can't you?" Anna smiled again and shook her head gently. Then, she pointed to her ear and signed something. Small, fluid hand gestures that Ethan didn't understand. He forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Oh, you're deaf." The other employees nearby froze. Some looked away. A few pitied her. But Ethan smirked. "All right, let's make this quick then." He exaggerated his words as if she were a child. "Your room is not ready yet." Anna's polite expression faltered for the first time. She wrote something else. "I arrived early. I can wait in the cafe if that's okay." Ethan snorted softly. Sure. Cafe's that way." He waved dismissively toward the lounge. "Try not to knock over anything." A few guests turned their heads. Anna bowed slightly, trying to keep her composure, then walked toward the cafe. The receptionist next to Ethan whispered, "Sir, that was a bit harsh." He shrugged. If she wants special treatment, she should have mentioned her disability when she booked. What Ethan didn't notice was that the security camera above the reception desk caught everything. Every word, every smirk, every dismissive wave. In the cafe, Anna ordered tea by writing on her notepad for the waiter. She sat by the window, watching the city bustle outside. Despite the humiliation, she remained composed. She was used to it. People assumed silence meant weakness. They never understood that listening wasn't the only way to hear the world. From her bag, she pulled out her tablet and began typing an email. It was addressed to Mr. David Clark. The subject line read, "Arrived at the Rosewood Grand." She typed, "Everything is fine. Staff seems untrained for accessibility needs, but nothing I can't handle. I'll observe a little longer before you come. Please don't mention I'm there yet." She hit send and looked up. The waiter brought her tea and smiled kindly. A rare moment of genuine warmth in a place built on appearances. Across the lobby, Ethan watched her from behind the desk. "Weird girl," he muttered. "Probably some charity case booking through connections." One of the junior staff members hesitated. "But sir, her booking's under Clark Holdings. Isn't that one of the owner's partners?" Ethan rolled his eyes. "Probably some relative. Rich people always have strays tagging along." He didn't realize just how wrong he was. An hour later, Ethan was giving a tour to a small group of potential investors. His tone was confident, polished, almost charming. "Here at Rosewood, we pride ourselves on five-star service and unmatched hospitality. Every guest is treated with respect and personal care." The investors nodded approvingly. As they passed the cafe, Ethan gestured broadly. "Our staff is trained to meet every need." He stopped mid-sentence. Anna was standing near the counter, trying to get the barista's attention, but the cashier wasn't noticing her. She gently tapped the counter, smiling, then pointed at a menu. The barista, confused, called out, "Sir, can you come help?" Ethan sighed loudly in front of the investors. "Unbelievable," he muttered, walking over. He looked at Anna. "Didn't I already tell you your room's not ready? What are you still doing here?" She blinked, confused, then took out her notepad and wrote, "Just wanted a refill, please." Ethan laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, a refill. Well, how about you refill your patients and stop bothering my staff?" The investors exchanged awkward glances. One of them whispered, "Is he mocking her?" Ethan pretended not to notice. "Come on, folks, this way to the ballroom. You'll love it." Anna stood frozen, cheeks burning with quiet humiliation. She turned her eyes to the reflection in the glass, her own face pale, the red smear of tea on the counter behind her like a wound. But even then, she didn't retaliate. She simply wiped the counter clean with a napkin, smiled faintly to the barista, and walked away. What Ethan didn't know was that the owner of the hotel was arriving that very afternoon, and the moment he stepped through those revolving glass doors would change everything. By mid-afternoon, the Rosewood Grand had transformed into a hive of activity. Polished shoes clicked across the marble floor, staff hurried to their positions, and the faint tension that always came with an owner's visit filled the air. Ethan straightened his tie for the fourth time, scanning every corner of the lobby. The place looked perfect, or so he thought. Anna was still seated quietly in the cafe, reading her notepad. She had been waiting for her room for nearly 3 hours, yet she hadn't complained once. Occasionally, she smiled at guests or signed something polite to passing staff who didn't understand her gestures. The security guard, an older man named Luis, noticed her patience and shook his head. "She's got more grace than most people here," he muttered under his breath. The doors opened, and a black luxury car stopped outside. Ethan's back straightened instantly. "He's here," he whispered to the receptionist. 2 men in suits entered first, scanning the area, then stepped aside. A tall man in his late 50s walked in calm, confident, wearing a charcoal suit that looked both understated and commanding. David Clark, owner of Rosewood Grand. The staff almost lined up instinctively as he passed. Ethan hurried forward, flashing his best corporate smile. "Mr. Clark, what a pleasure to have you back with us. The hotel's running smoothly, sir. We've maintained top client ratings all quarter." David didn't answer immediately. He was looking around the lobby with an expression that wasn't exactly pleased. His eyes landed briefly on the front desk, then on the cafe, where Anna sat near the window, her back to him. A small smile tugged at the corner of his lips, but he said nothing. "Good work, Ethan," David said finally, his voice calm but cool. "Why don't you walk me through the new guest experience?" Ethan brightened. "Absolutely, sir. We've improved our concierge response times. Our check-in process is fully digital, and our team is trained for customer empathy." David raised an eyebrow. "Empathy, you say?" "Yes, sir," Ethan said confidently. "Every guest, no matter who they are, gets the same 5-star treatment." David nodded slowly, still observing him. "That's excellent to hear." He turned slightly and gestured toward the cafe. "Tell me, Ethan, how would your staff handle a guest who doesn't speak or hear?" Ethan froze for a second. Well, that would depend, sir. We'd certainly do our best to accommodate." "Do your best," David repeated softly, looking directly at him. "And what does that mean exactly?" Ethan forced a laugh. "Of course, we'd be professional and respectful, sir. Communication might be challenging, but we'd manage." "Interesting," David said, glancing again toward Anna, who was now gathering her things to leave. "Let's test that theory, shall we?" Ethan blinked. "Sir." David raised his hand slightly, motioning to the receptionist. "Would you kindly bring that young woman over here? The one by the window." The receptionist hesitated. "Sir, that's the guest who—" Ethan cut in quickly, lowering his voice. She's a special case, sir. Death caused a few misunderstandings earlier. Nothing serious." David's expression didn't change. Bring her here. Anna looked surprised as the receptionist approached and gestured for her to follow. She walked over carefully, standing a few steps from the desk. Ethan gave a tight smile. Hello again, Miss Clark. We were just sorting your room now. David turned toward her, and what happened next made the entire lobby fall silent. He lifted his hands and began to sign fluently. His movements were smooth, practiced, natural, the language of someone who'd known it for years. Hello, Anna. I'm sorry I'm late. How has the staff treated you? Anna's face lit up instantly. She responded in quick, graceful signs. Everything's fine, Uncle David. I was just observing. A murmur rippled through the staff. Ethan's jaw nearly dropped. Uncle? He whispered. David turned to him with a small smile that didn't reach his eyes. Ethan, meet my niece, Anna Clark. She's head of accessibility audits for Clark Holdings. The color drained from Ethan's face. Audits? That's right, David said. She travels to our hotels unannounced to assess how we treat guests with disabilities. Every report goes directly to me. Ethan's throat went dry. Sir, I didn't know. That's precisely the point, David interrupted, his tone calm but cutting. You didn't need to know. You only needed to care. Anna signed something, and David translated for her, his voice steady. She says she gave everyone the benefit of the doubt. Until this morning. Ethan's heart thudded. Sir, please, I think there's been a misunderstanding. David held up a hand. Enough. I saw the footage myself. We have cameras for a reason. Every staff member looked stunned. The silence was so heavy that even the faint hum of the air conditioner felt loud. Ethan swallowed hard. Sir, I didn't mean any harm. I was just doing your job? David asked quietly. Because if your job is to embarrass guests and make them feel small, then congratulations, you're doing it perfectly. Ethan's eyes darted around the lobby. The investors who'd been visiting earlier had gathered near the elevators, whispering among themselves. David looked at his niece again and signed. Would you like to continue this here, or in the conference room? Anna smiled faintly and signed back. Here's fine. Everyone should learn. David nodded. Then he faced the staff. Effective immediately, this hotel will undergo full accessibility retraining. And Ethan? His tone softened, though his words still carried weight. You'll sit in the front row. Consider this your second chance to actually listen. Ethan stood frozen, shame burning across his face. The staff avoided his eyes. The reception desk, once his throne, now felt like a spotlight exposing everything he wasn't. As Anna turned to leave, she paused and signed one last sentence. David interpreted for her softly. She says, empathy isn't about hearing. It's about listening with your heart. Then she smiled politely and walked toward the elevator. The only sound left in the lobby was the soft echo of her footsteps, and the quiet realization settling into everyone's chest that they had just witnessed something they would never forget. The next morning, the air inside the Rosewood Grand Hotel felt different. The usual quiet confidence had been replaced by tension, the kind that made even the sound of footsteps echo louder than usual. Every staff member knew what had happened yesterday. They had seen the look on Mr. Clark's face. They had seen Ethan's humiliation. And now, everyone waited to see what came next. Ethan arrived early. His crisp suit couldn't hide the exhaustion in his eyes. For the first time in years, he didn't walk with pride. The employees who once stood straighter when he passed now avoided his gaze. Some whispered softly. Others simply watched in silence. He reached his office and found an envelope on the desk. It was sealed with the Clark Holdings logo. His fingers trembled slightly as he opened it. Inside was a short note in Mr. Clark's handwriting. Report to the conference hall at 9 a.m. DC. No threats. No explanation. Just that. By 9 o'clock, the entire staff had gathered in the large conference hall. The room that once hosted elegant weddings and high-end business meetings now felt like a courtroom. Rows of chairs faced the stage. A projector screen displayed the words, Rosewood Grand, Accessibility and Human Dignity Training. Ethan stood near the back, trying to blend into the crowd. But it was impossible. Everyone knew he was the reason they were there. The doors opened, and David Clark entered, followed by Anna. She looked calm, professional, her notepad tucked under her arm. The staff straightened immediately. Even those who didn't understand sign language felt the quiet authority she carried. David stepped up to the microphone. "Good morning, everyone." His voice was steady, deep, the kind of voice that could command a room without raising itself. "Yesterday, I witnessed something that reminded me why success means nothing without respect. This hotel runs on human service, and yet, humanity seems to have been forgotten somewhere between the marble floors and the 5-star ratings." He paused and looked directly at Ethan, though he didn't name him. A deaf guest was mocked in this very building. A guest who trusted us with her safety and her comfort. And that guest, as many of you now know, was my niece, Anna Clark. A few gasps spread through the crowd. Ethan's throat tightened. David continued, "I've brought her here today because I want all of us to learn. Not from a manual, not from corporate training slides, but from her." He stepped aside and signed toward Anna, inviting her forward. Anna took a deep breath and stepped up to the microphone. Her interpreter, a young woman in a navy blue dress, stood beside her. Anna began signing slow, deliberate, each gesture graceful and full of meaning. The interpreter's voice echoed through the room. "When you live in silence, people think you live without a voice. But silence doesn't mean weakness. It doesn't mean ignorance. It means you learn to listen. To expressions, to tone, to everything that words can't say." Anna looked around the room, her eyes soft but firm. She signed again. "Yesterday, I wasn't angry when I was mocked. I was disappointed. Because kindness doesn't require sound. It requires awareness." Ethan lowered his head. Anna continued, "Some of you were kind. Some of you tried to help. But one person's cruelty can erase 10 people's compassion if it happens in public. That's what the world remembers. The loudest voice often belongs to the one who shouldn't be speaking at all." The staff was silent. No one fidgeted, no one whispered. Her message hung in the air like a mirror. Then she turned to Ethan. Her expression wasn't cruel. It was steady, almost forgiving. She signed a single line, and her interpreter translated softly, "Everyone makes mistakes, but only those who own them become better." For the first time, Ethan looked up and met her eyes. There was shame, but also something else, gratitude. David stepped back to the microphone. "Thank you, Anna." He looked at the staff again. "Starting today, we are implementing full accessibility awareness across every Clark Holdings property. That means sign language basics, wheelchair assistance training, and empathy workshops." He paused, his gaze settling on Ethan. "And the man responsible for yesterday's mistake has agreed to lead the initiative." Murmurs broke out across the hall. Ethan blinked in disbelief. "Serve me?" David nodded slowly. "Yes. Consider it your chance to understand the people you failed to see. You'll work directly under Anna for the next 3 months. Every report you submit will carry both your names." Ethan's voice cracked slightly. "I don't deserve that trust, sir." David's tone softened. "Trust isn't a gift. It's a responsibility. Earn it back." Anna nodded in quiet agreement. The meeting ended with applause, not thunderous, but genuine. For once, the sound wasn't forced or professional. It was human. Afterward, as the staff dispersed, Ethan approached Anna. His voice was low, hesitant. "I don't know how to apologize for what I said." Anna smiled faintly and signed, "By doing better next time." Ethan tried to imitate her sign, clumsy but sincere. She laughed softly, a soundless laugh, but it reached her eyes. For the first time in his career, Ethan realized that leadership wasn't about command, it was about connection. That evening, he sat in his office watching a tutorial on sign language. Each gesture felt awkward at first, but as the night went on, he found a strange calm in learning it. Every motion, Every sign carried meaning, a new kind of language he had never cared to learn before. And somewhere across the hall, Anna watched him through the glass, smiling quietly to herself. Maybe, just maybe, this hotel still had hope. Over the next few weeks, the Rosewood Grand began to change. Not overnight, not through press releases, but through small, steady acts of humanity that slowly rewired the entire place. The signs of transformation were everywhere. Employees greeted guests with warmth instead of rehearsed smiles. Front desk clerks learned to maintain eye contact when speaking to someone who couldn't hear them. Even the barista, who once panicked when Anna ordered tea, now signed thank you every morning with pride. And at the center of it all was Ethan Marsh, the same man who had once smirked at a deaf guest, now walking through the lobby carrying flashcards labeled Basic Sign Language, Day 23. Every morning, he gathered the staff in a small huddle by the reception. "All right," he'd say, holding up a card. "This one means good morning. Let's all try it together." The staff laughed sometimes at their awkward movements, but no one mocked anymore. Anna would watch from the cafe, sometimes joining in, sometimes quietly observing. Every now and then, their eyes would meet, and Ethan would nod respectfully. A silent acknowledgement that words could no longer capture what he was trying to rebuild. One afternoon, Mr. Clark returned unexpectedly. As soon as he walked in, Ethan approached him. "Sir, we've implemented the accessibility modules in all departments. Every staff member has completed Level 1 training." David raised an eyebrow. "Impressive. And how are guests responding?" Ethan smiled genuinely for the first time in months. "We've received 12 positive letters this week, from guests with disabilities, senior travelers, and even one from a teacher of the deaf community. They said they felt seen for the first time." David looked over his shoulder toward Anna, who was helping the concierge sign directions to a guest. "Good," he said. "Then you're finally hearing what this place was always meant to say." Later that week, the hotel hosted a charity gala, a fundraising event for inclusive hospitality programs. The ballroom was dressed in gold and white, the chandeliers reflecting light like liquid glass. Reporters filled the corners, and a small crowd of investors and local dignitaries mingled over champagne. Ethan had helped organize every detail, but what he didn't expect was the surprise Mr. Clark had planned for the evening. As the crowd settled, David took the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "tonight we celebrate not luxury, but leadership, the kind that humbles us, teaches us, and reminds us why we build places like this." He turned toward the side of the stage. "I'd like to invite two people up here who represent exactly that spirit." Anna and Ethan exchanged startled glances. David gestured to them both. "Anna Clark, our accessibility director, and Mr. Ethan Marsh, who has led this hotel's transformation from formality to empathy." The applause that followed was genuine and loud. Ethan stepped up awkwardly, tugging his cuff nervously. Anna smiled and began signing as the interpreter joined them. Anna's hands moved gracefully. When people talk about change, they forget it's not about policies. It's about hearts. A hotel doesn't become kind because of rules. It becomes kind because people choose to care. The interpreter's voice echoed through the ballroom, but all eyes were on Anna's face, her movements, her confidence. Then she turned to Ethan and signed, "Even those who fail can become the reason others succeed, if they choose humility over pride." The audience was quiet, moved. Ethan took the microphone, voice thick but steady. "I used to think running a hotel meant perfection. Flawless service, spotless marble, fancy ratings. But perfection without compassion is just vanity in disguise. What I learned from Anna is simple. You can't manage hospitality if you don't understand humanity." Applause erupted again. Cameras flashed. But Ethan wasn't thinking about publicity. He looked at Anna, who nodded approvingly, her smile small but proud. After the gala ended, Ethan found a moment alone on the balcony. The city stretched before him, lights flickering like constellations in motion. Anna joined him quietly, standing beside him. He looked at her and signed slowly, clumsily. "Thank you." She smiled, correcting his form gently, then signed back. "You listened. That's enough." They stood there in silence, watching the night unfold. The same silence Ethan once found uncomfortable now felt peaceful, alive with meaning. When they returned to the lobby later, a group of guests from out of town approached Anna. They had seen her speech. One of them, a young girl with a hearing aid, signed shyly, "You're amazing." Anna knelt down, responding in perfect sign, "So are you." The girl's mother wiped her tears, whispering to Ethan, "You have no idea what that meant to her." He smiled quietly. "Actually," he said, "I think I do." That night, as the ballroom emptied, Ethan stayed behind to turn off the lights. He paused at the door, glancing back at the grand space filled with the echoes of laughter, applause, and something much deeper, redemption. He realized that he had started this journey thinking he was the teacher, but he had ended up as the student. And in that lesson, he found something that every hotel manual had failed to teach him. That true luxury wasn't in chandeliers or suites. It was in dignity. Months passed, and the Rosewood Grand no longer felt like the same hotel. What was once a palace of silent pride had turned into a place of warm greetings, thoughtful service, and quiet dignity. Guests noticed it first. Reviews online weren't just about rooms or breakfast anymore. They were about how the staff made them feel. "Best stay ever," one post read. "My son is hearing impaired," and the staff surprised him by greeting him in sign language. "Finally," wrote another, "a hotel that doesn't just talk about equality, it shows it." Within half a year, the Rosewood Grand's reputation spread across the country. Business magazines called it the hotel that hears without sound. The media wanted to know the story behind the change, and that's when Ethan's name began appearing again. Not as a manager, but as a leader who had turned shame into transformation. When the National Hospitality Association invited him to speak at their annual conference, Ethan hesitated. "Sir," he told Mr. Clark, "I'm not sure I'm the right person for that." David smiled. "You're exactly the right person. You made a mistake, you learned from it, and you rebuilt this place. That's leadership." Anna, sitting beside them, nodded in agreement. She signed slowly, "Share the story, Ethan. Not for pride, for purpose." And so, on a bright morning in Chicago, in front of hundreds of executives, journalists, and hospitality experts, Ethan Marsh walked onto the stage. He didn't start with a speech. He started with silence. He stood for 5 long seconds, looking at the audience, then began signing a single phrase, "Welcome, everyone." An interpreter echoed the words, but by then, the audience was already leaning forward, moved by the gesture. Ethan continued, speaking softly now. "I once believed silence was awkward, that it meant something was missing, but I've learned that silence can be powerful. Because in silence, you finally hear what you were too busy to notice before." He shared Anna's story, how she came to the hotel, how he mocked her without realizing she was testing him, and how that moment of humiliation became his turning point. He didn't sugarcoat his failure. He owned it. "I used to think my job was to make guests feel impressed," he said. "Now I know it's to make them feel seen." By the time he finished, the entire hall was on its feet. Some applauded. Some wiped their eyes. The moment wasn't about applause, it was about awakening. After the conference, reporters surrounded him for interviews. One asked, "Do you have any regrets, Mr. Marsh?" He smiled faintly. "Regret is a teacher. I just wish I'd started listening sooner." A month later, back at the Rosewood Grand, a bronze plaque appeared beside the reception desk. It read, "Every guest has a story. Every story deserves respect. Rosewood Grand, in honor of Anna Clark." Ethan ran his fingers across the plaque the day it was unveiled. Anna stood beside him, her hands folded calmly. He turned to her and signed, "This is all because of you." She shook her head, smiling. "No, because of you, and everyone who chose to change." Just then, a black car stopped outside the entrance. Two young people stepped out, one in a suit, one in jeans and a backpack. They both looked around the lobby with admiration. Anna gestured toward them. "New interns from Clark Holdings. They'll be shadowing you this week." Ethan blinked. "Me?" She nodded. "It's your turn to teach." He laughed softly. "Guess I'd better make a good first impression." "Start with kindness," she signed. "It works." That evening, as the guests checked in and the hotel hummed with quiet energy, David Clark arrived unannounced again. Ethan greeted him at the door. David smiled. "You've built something rare here, Ethan. A business that remembers it's built by people." "Thank you, sir," Ethan said humbly. David looked over at Anna, who was teaching the concierge how to sign good night. He turned back to Ethan and added, "You know, there's something I never told you." Anna wasn't just testing accessibility. She was testing leadership. Every property in our company will now follow this model, training managers to lead with empathy first. Ethan stared at him, stunned. "You mean this program will go company-wide?" David nodded. "And I want you to lead it." Ethan's throat tightened. "Sir, I don't have the degree, or the—" David cut him off gently. "You have what most of them don't, the experience of failing and rebuilding. You understand what it means to make people feel small, and now you know how to make them feel seen. That's worth more than any degree." Anna smiled proudly from across the lobby, signing playfully, "Congratulations, boss." Ethan laughed, signing back awkwardly, "Teacher." Later that night, long after the last guest had gone to bed, Ethan stood alone in the lobby. The chandeliers were dim now, the city's streetlights glimmering through the glass doors. He looked around the space that once symbolized arrogance and saw something else: compassion, growth, redemption. In the reflection of the glass, he saw his own faint smile. "Not bad for a guy who used to think empathy was a weakness," he murmured. Then, as if on cue, he signed a small phrase to himself, clumsy but heartfelt. "Thank you." Behind him, Anna appeared quietly, placing a hand on his shoulder. She signed one word, simple and perfect: heard. And in that silence, not empty, but full, Ethan realized he had finally learned to listen, not just with his ears, but with his heart.